Thank you. I'm going to start reading some of the questions because there are quite a few. I think you've pretty much answered this, so it shouldn't be too much of a, but someone says, when you talk about childhood impacting adult relationships and attachment styles, what age are you talking about? But
you know, from womb. So, and I talk about this in the book, the tone of the pregnancy starts to lay down the blueprint. And that's why this can get so confusing. Like the earliest moments of your life have the biggest impact on you, and we don't have access to them. And it's no one's fault. It could, you know, so really throughout, wounding happens throughout. I would say the earlier the wounding, the more sensational the experience is going to show up in the here and now.
Somebody says, no worries about the internet connection. We're all used to it by now. And she's absolutely right. I'm experiencing a close, intimate friendship with someone for the first time in my life. My patterns of anxious attachment have been very evident. Can you suggest practices or things I can explore with my friend to start healing my way of attaching in an anxious way?
Yeah. So if I understand the question, this person is starting to be awakened to their anxious attachment now. Mm-hmm. And so this relationship is bringing up your wounding and awakening your internal unrest. And so working inner child work, my book would definitely be a good option for you. Not only for you, but if your partner was actually interested in doing the work and understanding this, and truly, if you have a partner who is willing to kind of get conscious and understand this within you, they become part of your healing journey. So the more information that they have, and the more you start to be in the sensations, connect them back, work through co-regulation through people who are available, because co-regulation is probably needed at times. And what I mean by co-regulation is you don't need a therapist per se, although psychotherapy has a point. I could talk about the science of that, but you need a non-judgmental, warm, supportive friend who isn't going to pour more gasoline on the fire. So they're not going to tell you how bad your partner is or how awful they are, but they're going to hold deep space for you and just be, I see you really struggling right now. I mean, it's in the holding that there's healing. It's not in the fixing. And that's a big misconception. And if your partner can offer you some reassurance, and you can ask for that in the relationship and they can give it to you, chances are they are more secure. If they run away when you need reassurance, chances are this might not be a healing relationship. It might just be an awakening relationship. So you really want to see, can my partner show up in my own anxiety? Can they show up in a loving way where they don't try to fix it? They just hold it with me and they can be reassuring to me. Because if you have a partner like that, there's a huge opportunity for that to be part of your inner world and your inner nurturing community, which is something I talk about in the book. I would say those are the main things. What is coming up for you right now in this early relationship has little to do with them. It's what their energy is bringing up and activating within you. And it's a beautiful portal in for you. And if they're willing to get conscious with you, it could be a healing relationship. And if they aren't, it could just be an awakening for you to start to do some of your own work.
Thank you. Lots of questions coming in. I knew that there would be. I mean, you have alluded to this, but again, because you've covered lots brilliantly, but I think perhaps maybe this person is emphasizing the timing of it. Do you have a choice to change your response from anxiety to acceptance in a short space of time? Arnie says, interestingly.
Well, I would say this, and anxiety is a protector, and anxiety is not necessarily something we want to get rid of. And I know everyone listening right now does not want to hear that.
No, we've just done an event saying about how we need to sort of, anxiety is not a bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and there's false anxiety and there's true anxiety, and the cues as to when my anxiety is kind of being activated and when is this really happening and I should be cued and when is it not. And I think as a society, but your society too, we want to get rid of the anxiety, but the anxiety is really giving us information. And the more we can be with the anxiety and see it as a protection and understand what it's protecting me from, and be with that, the anxiety will lessen. But it's not about a getting rid of. It's almost a welcoming of. I know that sounds crazy. I have a meditation like befriending your anxiety. Hi, I see you're up there, or hi, I can feel you in my stomach, or I can feel you in my body. You're trying to protect me. You're in a sympathetic place. What is it that I'm really scared of? And can I get under the anxiety? Because anxiety is sympathetic. And sometimes when we drop under, there's grief or fear or a wound that's there. And so when we run on anxiety, we're just trying to prevent ourselves from dropping into our body. And so it's really important to understand that, anxiety is trying to help you, ironically, and it's not helping you. But we don't reject that part. We start to tend to that differently. We start to befriend it differently. We start to thank it, and we start to come up with other options and get to the root of what it might be masking, because anxiety is sometimes easier than grief, and anxiety is sometimes easier than pain. So often our anxiety is protecting us from things we don't even realize it's protecting us from.
Mm-hmm. I think some good questions from people who are talking more on the avoidance side. Joanna says, what constitutes safety for an avoidant person? I only really feel safe when I'm alone.
Yeah. And to all the avoidant people who identify, I see you, and I feel like it's a harder path in some ways just because it's not talked about as much. But the true healing for someone who's avoidant is finding one safe person. And it might be a therapist, because it's literally the therapist's job to be safe, and being in the presence of that person enough to start opening up. And, the thing about safety, and this is what I'll say, you can't fake it, right? So like I could be here with Hannah and she could be looking at me. I can't make my system feel safe with her. If her system isn't truly safe and settled, my system might not settle. But if I'm in the presence of someone who's calm enough, non-judgmental and nurturing, and I'm in that presence enough, my system will release implicit and will release and drop, and it will allow my own inherent wisdom and health and healing to surface. But it's not until I feel safe enough with someone else's system that this would happen. So I would say if you start with someone who really understands avoidance, and they have to be, when I'm working with someone who's avoidant, so freaking patient and slow, and it's peeling back the layers, and that if a therapist goes too fast and their system isn't safe enough, it could take longer. But if you have a really attuned therapist, maybe you spend 3 sessions doing nothing, but in the presence of them, having surface level conversations. But eventually your system will recognize safety. Eventually, because this is how we're wired. And that getting vulnerable just a little and realizing that it's not terrifying will lead to just a little bit more. And you'll be re-experiencing in that relationship that it's okay to let your wall down slowly by slowly. And you can't fake that. That will just come through experiencing enough safety long enough for your system to recognize this person is safe. I can get a little bit more vulnerable here. So safety can't be faked. It's your nervous system recognizing in the nervous system of another. And that's truly how another person's ventral state of safety becomes like a joining, and your system learns to match theirs. And eventually your system releases what needs to be healed. It comes to the surface through the safety of that relationship. And it could take time. I know for me, one of my therapists, this therapist that I'm working with, and I'm a therapist who definitely sees a therapist, I think I saw her for 6 months before my system dropped in, and I allowed her into my world and really allowed myself to get to some of the harder things that I was going through. I was more vengeful, workaholic. It took a lot for me to realize, okay, well, let's slow down. I really need to slow down, and I need to let her see the shameful parts of me and let her be in those experiences with me, and that this is safe, even though it sucks. This is safe. And in that led to compassion because of how she met me. And so that took me, I'm going to be honest, it took me like 6 months with this therapist to really let her in and know that like I could feel shame in front of her. And it was hard. It was really, really hard, but it is possible. And that's how you start to do the work.
So many brilliant questions. It's hard to know where to go, but I think this is a really interesting question about whether these principles and processes apply to the relationship within an original family, so parents and siblings.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I talk about romantic relationships because that's where it surprises us. But we're like, oh, you know, I met this person at 45. How am I, you know, regressing? But really, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, this happens everywhere. There are mother-daughter relationships that are enmeshed, and there's a lot of anxiety. I have to take care of my mother. I talk about this in the book, and that those original relationships are the ones that also can be corrected. And when they're corrected, you know, it's very empowering. And sometimes they can't be corrected, but they're still going to show up. Basically, attachment's going to show up with anybody that you're particularly close to, who's important to you, because they can touch you. And what I mean by that is that they have the access to your world, and what they do matters so much to you because they are so close to you. So all your fears and all your strategies are going to show up with people you're closest to and where the bonds are deepest. And often that is our family.
Really important. Also, a very good question. Where did it go? Please, could you talk a little bit, this person says, about jealousy with a gregarious, flirtatious partner and the anxiety that produces?
Yeah, I mean, jealousy is an insecurity for the person who might be manipulating. So if someone is trying to make you jealous, what they're really subconsciously saying is, I want to provoke a little fear in you and make you realize that, you know, you got to come and chase me, or that you could lose me at any moment. And that's has to do with them, you know. And if you're feeling jealous, which is totally normal, I actually think there's a healthy degree of jealousy. You know, if I found out my husband was doing something at a bar, I would be jealous, you know, there's a healthy degree. But if you're feeling disproportionately jealous, there could be a fear of abandonment and a fear that, you know, I could lose this person because I'm not good enough, or I'm not measuring up. And you kind of want to get to a place of surrender, because if you lose them, they're not meant for you. And if you spend all this energy comparing yourself to others, that's exhausting. So there comes a place where you need to realize a little jealousy is healthy, but is this crossing the line? And if it is for me, how do I surrender to, I have no control over what my partner really does. And if I don't trust them, if I don't have that inherent trust, that's really what I need to look at, not the jealousy, but why is it that my system's not trusting them? Do I need more reassurance? Have I been cheated on before? Is there a history of the rug being pulled out from underneath me? Why is it that this is coming up for me now? And start to get like a little bit more deeper on those questions, because we could all sit around and be scared that at any moment something could happen, but we have to inherently trust our partner. And we also have to inherently trust our path with our partner, that we can't control everything. But if there's that trust there to begin with, the jealousy should lower, and we should be able to turn to our partner and say, I feel a little insecure right now. Could you give me a little reassurance? And then to say, you're amazing, right? And, or it makes sense. I'm on a business trip and I'm gone for 10 days, and it makes sense that your anxiety would come up. Or, but if someone's inherently trying to make you jealous, they've got something going on with them. And so you kind of want to look at that, maybe explore what is it about them that feels like they have to keep you on your toes, and maybe starting to have some conversations around that, because that could be potentially pretty damaging for the relationship in the long run, and for you to build a sense of safety.
Mm-hmm. Just finally, you mentioned therapy. Someone was wondering whether it's okay to sort of use your book without other support. They said they can't afford therapy, but they can afford your book. I wonder what your advice is there.
It's such a good question.
Yeah, an important one.
Healing happens in relationships, and I wrote a self-help book, but I write in my book that you just need a non-judgmental friend or two who you tell, I don't need you to fix me. I just need to know I can call you when the sensations come up and that you'll be there for me. And this is how we earn security. It's not necessary that you have a therapist, but it is necessary that you don't do it completely alone when times get hard, because you don't want to feel completely alone in it. And the more you know you can call that friend, the more implicit memories will show up. And so having some buddies, several people who you can say, I'm working towards insecurity, and can I call on you if I'm feeling super anxious? And I don't need anything from you, but to say, hey, I can see you're struggling, or hold space. You don't need to fix me. You just need to let me know I'm not alone in this moment. Co-regulate with me, just be there, because it is a lot easier to heal anxious attachment through co-regulation and healthy dependency, the interdependency with other human beings. It is much harder to heal this completely on your own. Having said that, I wrote the book as the author. We are going through this experience together. I am with you. Like, I use language in the book to make you feel less alone in itself. But I'm going to stress that having safe people to turn to when this stuff surfaces is really helpful. And if you can look into your world and see who is safe, who could I call, who could I let know I'm going through these experiences, so that if they do come up, I have a backup plan for co-regulation as they tend to surface. I hope that answers the question. It's never a black and white question. And self-help is, I wrote a book and I'm like, healing happens in healing relationships. Wounding happens in relationships. I have a relationship with you as the author. You can do a lot of it on your own, but you want to have that safety and a couple people that you can call upon if times get really dysregulated for you.
I'm afraid we have to leave it there. I think I've got through most of the questions. Some of them we'd already answered. If you had a question, I'm almost sure the book will answer it. It's got very sunny where I am. There we go. We'll answer it for you. But as I said at the start, thank you all very much indeed for joining us. And Jessica, thank you so much, and happy publication day to you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. You were amazing. And for everyone who's listening, thank you for joining. And I hope this was really, really helpful for you. And you are so not alone. If this is resonating with you, you're not alone.